So official. How exciting. All right, folks. We've got about a minute before our official start time for the webinar today. So I'll give you guys about 60 seconds or so, and then we'll get going. Okay. Make sure everything looks good for me. Go. All right. So we're going to get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today. For those of you who I have not talked to on the phone in Illinois, Minnesota, or Wisconsin, my name is Summer. I work on the partnerships team over here at NoRedInk. I've been working with NoRedInk for almost 2.5 years now. Before NoRedInk, I worked as a program coordinator in Latin America, where I would design a study abroad curriculum and then implement it with high school students. So, that's all to say. I'm really excited for you guys to be here today and to learn a bit more about what NoRedInk Premium is. I've spoken with hundreds of educators about the challenges that they're facing when they're teaching their students to write. And today, what I want to show you is the top reasons why schools use NoRedInk Premium to support their students both in the classroom and from home. So just broad picture, we're going to do some Q&A at the end of this. We've got a poll question to just kind of see where folks are at. I also am wearing a really, really sweet NoRedInk shirt that you guys won't be getting my own shirt, but we will be raffling off a couple of shirts as well. So I figured that we would just start off with a little bit of housekeeping. I'm going to turn off my video because I think we tend to have better broadband when I don't have the video on. So I'll do that and we'll get started. Okay. So like I said, housekeeping, I'd like to also introduce you folks to my colleague, Kelly. She is on our support team, and she is going to help me answering some questions from behind the scenes. Kelly, you want to say hi real quick?
Hello. Thank you all for joining us. I'm very excited to help out with Summer answering your questions. Great.
Awesome. So Kelly will be answering questions behind the scenes. If you go on your GoToWebinar panel, you can type in those questions throughout the session. We're also going to have, like I said, a poll, so keep an eye out for those. And then also, if you guys want to follow along in your own NoRedInk teacher account, feel free to log in and you can kind of take a look at what I'm talking about as we go through it. So I wanted to kind of start high level of where NoRedInk began. A while ago, like about 7 to 8 years ago, Jeff started NoRedInk, our CEO, in his classroom in Chicago Public Schools. He was noticing that it was really difficult to differentiate practice amongst his students for grammar and writing support. And he also specifically, found that it was really time consuming to do that, right? So we started off in his classroom as a grammar program, and NoRedInk went viral because of our grammar program. Now that we've had a couple of years in this game, we've gotten to incorporate features to support the entire writing process for students and teachers. So big picture, we want teachers to use our site to help students work through the entire writing process, starting with skill building practice, learning how to structure an essay with writing your first draft, maybe taking that composition through a couple processes of collaboration with peer review or self-review and revision, right? So helping your students work through those steps. And all the while, we want to give teachers feedback so that they can assess their student work and an ability to track growth without being a bottleneck to students getting more practice and feedback, right? So through each of these steps, we want you folks to have the ability to give that feedback and grading. When we're looking big picture today, here's a couple goals that I hope we can cover. So first and foremost, what's included with NoRedInk Premium, what the results you can expect to see are, right? So a couple of case studies that we've done with some folks, what teachers themselves find most valuable. And then also just overall, what tools are available to garner your support at your school, right? So first off, I'm gonna check my technology skills here and see if I can implement this poll, but I wanna get a lay of the land and kind of see who is with us today. So I'm gonna launch this poll. I'll give you guys a couple minutes to vote. I'll give it about 30 more seconds here. It's always nice to have a 30-second meditation in the middle of the day, if you ask me. All right. Okay, cool. I'm gonna close out the poll now, and we'll take a look at these results. So this is awesome, right? So a few months ago, for those of you who are newer to NoRedInk, welcome. I'm so excited for you to be here today. For those of you who are more veterans with NoRedInk, welcome as well. We so appreciate your support, and I can imagine that it's been helpful for your students. So thanks for coming along with us with this ride. I think today what we want to do is help all of you kind of see what the premium version looks like in comparison to that free version that you've been using. And then also, talk about how this can help with distance learning, right? So let's get into it, right? What is NoRedInk Premium? What are we even talking about here? You've been using the free version for a while, and you've likely seen a lot of flags on pieces of the content, right? So when schools purchase NoRedInk Premium, you get access to all of that content, plus a lot more, which you can kind of see in this visualized chart here. One quick thing to note, due to distance learning, we have added access to a lot of our additional premium features. So these things are traditionally only available in the paid version of the program, but we've made them available in the free version because of this distance learning craziness. Access to these features are going to end at the end of this school year, right? So that is to say, now is a great time to try out our state standard alignment, or take a look at some of our different essay types, because those will no longer be available in the free version of the program after the end of this school year. It's worth noting the functionality of the free version is the same as premium, such as like personalizing for each student, right? But you're going to lack the majority of content with the free version. So what this looks like in terms of differences, and again, I'm talking about the traditional free version, not distance learning free version. But what this looks like is 20% of our content is free, whereas, the rest of that is on the paid version. I think a lot of teachers tell me that it kind of feels like you're taking a step forward when you find this program that differentiates amongst your students and is so easy to personalize with each student. But then all of a sudden you're locked off with content, right? So you're taking a step back again, because then you have to create that content or go source that content. And you found NoRedInk to alleviate that pain point in the first place, right? So paid version, going to give you access to everything. And I think, best way to look at this is to actually hop into the program. What I'd like to do today is kind of take this from, the viewpoint of me as a teacher, right? So what we can do is I'm going to start here. I'm going to move these little panels. Okay. So I'm on my teacher account now, and what I can see is curriculum, assignments, and student data. Typically, as a teacher, you would start at this curriculum library just to get a sense of like what is in this program, right? You'll notice with NoRedInk, we've broken up our content with writing and grammar. Both of these tabs have activities, and then you can browse the specific activities by content, right? I think one of the most valuable pieces of the paid version of the program is the ability to filter by standards. So in the free version, you only have access to this grade level tab, but in the paid version, you can browse by ACT, SAT, the MAP, AP language standards, or any of your state standards. Because I'm from California and I live in California now, I'm going to go by Common Core, right? And we'll say I'm a 7th grade teacher. So what I can see here, this is a great visual of what content specifically falls under these standards for my grade band. When we're talking about verticalizing information or building scopes and sequences, really the only way to do that is with the paid version of the program. This is a big selling point for admins as well, right? The ability to see how this content builds on top of one grade level to the next, instead of just picking from a massive hodgepodge of content. One of the things that I'm sure you've noticed in the free version is all of these locked off, right? These P flags here. So when we look at active and passive voice itself, we call this a practice pathway, right? We start with the most basic application of this skill, and then we're going to scaffold students to the most complex application of this skill, right? So like I said, paid version is really the only way that you can have students build skills on top of one another, because in the free version, you only have access to a couple of these skills, right? So back in my classroom here, I'm going to say that I needed to get a sense of where my students are struggling in some of these bigger picture topics that I know I need to teach throughout the semester. The first thing that I would do is assign a planning diagnostic. And this is going to give me a sense of where my students are at in those skills, right? So big picture, I can see out of these 5 skills, the majority of my students seem to be struggling with misplaced and dangling modifiers, whereas a lot of them seem more competent with components of a sentence, right? NoRedInk automatically buckets students from struggling up to proficient, so I can immediately get a sense of how I want to differentiate practice and who I want to focus on or who I know needs more attention, whereas other students might be able to move on to some more complex skills. Right? To take a look at how we give students work in the program, I'm going to go through a couple examples of practice, right? So NoRedInk, like I said, it's personalized to your student. We're asking them to select interests at the beginning of their time with NoRedInk, but we also ask them to select books or movies that they've read or seen, because a lot of our writing practice is content specific and source specific, right? So the idea here is once you've gotten a sense of where your students are struggling, you can go on and assign them some practice, right? With something like claims, evidence, and reasoning, we're going to ask students to highlight the differences in this paragraph. With something like transitions, maybe we ask students to build the remainder of this essay, right? So I can go ahead and move these portions of the essay around to create a strong transition. Something like paraphrasing, a lot of times students are really just confused about the differences between plagiarism and paraphrasing. So we want to show them how to properly paraphrase so as to avoid that issue of plagiarism, right? Going back to my teacher side, I think, a big thing worth noting, especially with going back to school this upcoming school year, is admins are going to want to know where students are at. And you guys are as well. And I'm sure, the problem of retention is going to be even more problematic after the semester of distance learning, right? So having something like a planning diagnostic to see where your students are starting at the beginning of the semester, and then having something like growth quizzes is going to be really valuable as well. So a growth quiz is something that you would give at the end of a unit, right? Presumably, I've given my students some practice on misplaced and dangling modifiers after their initial quiz, and now I want to check if they've grown or not. So what's helpful here is I can see where my students started at the beginning of the unit, and then where they either grew, regressed, or didn't grow at all at the end. One thing that you'll notice in the paid version of the program, and I know this is small on your screen, so I apologize, but in the paid version of the program, you get full scope of understanding of where your students, might be struggling or doing well with this specific topic, right? I have all of these subtopics in this practice pathway that I can take a look at. In the free version of the program, if you give a growth quiz on misplaced and dangling modifiers, you're maybe working with just a couple of topics, right? So for you to indicate, yes, my student is proficient in misplaced and dangling modifiers, you can really only do that in the paid version of the program, right? Free is a great trial, but it isn't a full supplemental resource. So, we've talked kind of about like going down into specific skills and seeing my students' growth in those skills. But to zoom this out, I would look at the mastery tab if I wanted to get a sense of where my kids were at with all of the skills they've been working on throughout an extended period of time. So in the free version of the program, this is pretty overwhelming, right? I can see all of the pathways that my students are working on and what level of mastery they're at. Quick note with the definition of mastery for NoRedInk, we aren't a grammar workbook, right? We don't have just stagnant questions in the program. So when a student demonstrates mastery, that means we've given them as many questions as they've needed to show us that they are proficient in that skill, right? There's no given set number of questions. But going back to the tab here, in the paid version of the program, I can go down to Common Core and again, go back to my grade band. So I can see big picture where my students are at with these skills that I know they need to learn, right? And how close they are to mastering them. Okay. So we've talked a lot about, curriculum, about data and reporting. Like I said, I think benchmarking tools is a really strong selling point for admin. I think another big portion of the program, that is primarily in the paid version are writing resources, right? So as a teacher, of course, the end goal with an ELA classroom is to improve your students' writing, right? We all want to build better writers in our students. So with these writing activities, we want to help you guys take your students through that entire writing process. Quick writes, those are available to everyone, right? This is a really lightweight, just simple way to get students writing. But the majority of guided drafts, self-review, and peer review are only available in the paid version of the program. I just got a question about students practicing and mastering topics on their own, and if that was available in NoRedInk. So just a quick note, whenever students log into their home dashboard here, they have this little button, Learn. So students can go in at any point in the program and practice and master these topics. We actually had a student in Illinois who scored a perfect SAT score because over spring break, he went into this Learn button, filtered by the SAT, and practiced all of those skills before his exam. Good question. Going back to writing, another quick note, like a good visual or something to bring to admin if writing is important for you and if you want to help boost writing at your school. The paid version of the program offers 10 times more essay types than the free version, right? So in distance learning, at the moment, you have access to all of these essay types for guided drafts, but like I said, at the end of the school year, they'll be locked off. We're continually adding more, right? Poetry analysis is coming soon, and ACT alignment is coming soon. But the idea with guided drafts is you can assign one of these to your students, you can customize this rubric and customize the prompt. And as students are working through their essay, we're going to give them resources on the left-hand side, right? So this is a persuasive essay, right? And we're giving students reminders. Hey, this is what a hook is. This is what a thesis statement is. If you need to pull off a full essay exemplar, you can do that here, right? Giving those students that content so that you don't have to source the content up front, right? But you can customize the prompt and the rubric that they need to go by, right? On the teacher side of things, once a student completes a guided draft, you can grade it alongside this rubric. And then if you have any additional comments to add, you can go ahead and highlight where you want to add that comment and go ahead and put in your comment itself. I'm clearly not a very nice grader, but right. So big picture with the writing resources that we have in NoRedInk, these are meant to help you take your students through that whole writing process. I think so often we're concerned about being the bottleneck of getting a student's grade back, because we know that there's a ton of content to grade. We also know that there's a ton of content that we need to source and create before we give students an essay, right? So NoRedInk is here to help you guys with those resources on the front end, so that when you are grading, right, it's a far more well thought out essay, instead of just your student thinking, oh, I'm just going to wait for my teacher to grade this, right? Really quickly, self-review is going to help your students as they're walking through their essay. We're going to ask them to highlight specific pieces. So maybe they highlight their thesis statement. If their thesis statement isn't quite an opinion yet, we're not only going to give them an opportunity to revise, but to show them how they can revise, right? Okay. And peer review, lastly, is a great way to collaborate, right? So students will work through components of the essay with one another, and they're going to give each other anonymized feedback on those specific components of an essay, right? So if they were working on a thesis statement, for example, we would ask students, hey, is your peer's thesis statement concise? Is it wordy? Is it opinionated? Is it factual? Right? Instead of asking them to collaborate and just say, hey, what did you think about that? Just a quick note, if you ever want to learn more about these, I'm going to tell you how you can reach out to us and learn more about Premium at the end of our time together. Okay. I'm going to find this little buddy, and I'm going to switch back over to our presentation. Oh, that's not it yet. There it is. Okay. So that's a pretty brief introduction of, a little bit more of the paid version. I think big things to note, you'll have access to more content, 10 times more essay types, and state standard alignment, as well as exam alignment. All three of those are really big selling points for admin, right? So now that you've got a good understanding of what's available, I think we can talk about some results that you can expect to see. When we're talking about the MAP exam, we did a study with West Ed, and essentially what they found, they had a group of students who didn't really use NoRedInk and students who were diligent with using NoRedInk throughout the school year. And they found that 37% of students in the study grew by 200% or more of their expected growth on the MAP, right? So what that equated out to was every 10 topics that the students who were diligently working on NoRedInk mastered, every 10 topics correlated with 20% annual growth on the MAP test. Big picture, what West Ed found is that NoRedInk performance is a robust predictor of end-of-year language growth, regardless of race, gender, grade, and baseline MAP score. Over in Jersey, Illinois, this was coming from a high school. So this high school was really struggling with lack of consistency. Students weren't engaged in the curriculum, and teachers just weren't seeing growth in any writing. They started using NoRedInk a couple years ago and got to see a lot of really nice results. So students who use NoRedInk averaged a 55-point improvement on the reading and writing portion of the SAT. I've included the national average here and those students who grew, right? And then on the ACT, the growth was even greater. So you can see the national average score here was 21, but students who used NoRedInk grew their points, they grew their scores 6 points on the average, which is substantial improvement. Over in Wiley ISD, Texas, these teachers had students from a massive range of different backgrounds, right? So the differentiation levels were high, and they were having difficulty just tracking the progress against standards and couldn't differentiate instruction for their varied student populations. I kind of liked seeing these results by subgroup. So you can see that the percentage of students who met the master's grade level score on their annual standardized test, it doubled with using NoRedInk, right? When we look at like economically disadvantaged, this doubled as well. And you can see these results here. Anecdotal evidence is also something that's spectacular. We have a Warm Fuzzies channel over at NoRedInk, and we just love to hear what teachers are saying about NoRedInk. I won't read all of these quotes for you guys, but big picture here, Teachers are telling us that NoRedInk is easy to use, is extremely valuable when you can filter by your own state standards, and scaffolding for students is super valuable. Overall, NoRedInk is helping them save a ton of time. So what else is included aside from all of the content, right? In addition to the full access of content, you're also going to get access to premium only on-demand training modules. So you can see these here. These are all in the program for you. They're accessible throughout the entire school year. And additionally, everyone receives support from a customer success manager, no matter the size of your school. So that's particularly important when we're going to have to move back to school, but then also kind of figuring out this back and forth for home and school learning. So your CSM will help you make sure that you're getting the most from the program, and then they can also provide you with custom professional development, right? So all of these folks are absolutely incredible. They're just here to help and make sure that you're growing. Another thing that you'll have access to is our incredible help center, right? So you'll have our help center. You'll also get to email back and forth with people like Kelly if you have any specific questions about the program, and just diving more into that paid version, right? We recently found, like in a survey done by EdWeek, administrators and teachers indicated that they were most concerned about assessing students' skills when they return to school and filling in for learning gaps that result from COVID-19 closures. So with the premium version of the program, as you saw, you can assess many different skills, but on top of that, only in the premium version can you guys get these school and district level reports, right? So one of the things that's really helpful here is that admins can see overall what teachers are using the program, you know, what kind of usage, right? Are they doing practice? Are they working on writing submissions? And then specifically, what skills are they working on? How can we filter that by our state standards and see the levels of proficiency for each of the students in schools? Okay. I'm gonna go over a couple of questions after we get to how do I get NoRedInk Premium, all right? So big picture, right? How do we get NoRedInk Premium? I just gave you guys a ton of information. So, you know, thank you for sticking with me. I appreciate it. But bottom line, Premium is available for schools and districts. And the very first step to getting this is to going to noredink.com/premium, right? So you can submit a form for pricing, and then you get to request a time to connect with your state's rep so they can help you prepare a custom quote for your school. Pricing depends on the size of your school and how many students you want to work with. And your rep is also going to be able to tell you how many other teachers are using at your school or in your district, right? So we don't sell single teacher licenses of premium. You know, this is a supplemental curriculum resource. So we believe that this should come out of a supplemental budget or an instructional materials budget and not out of the pocket of a teacher. And what's helpful about working with your state rep is that they can tell you, hey, these other people are using it, not only in your school, but in your area. And this is how we can get this for you as well, right? I want to note one more time, many of the free features that we have right now are going to be switching over to premium over the summer, right? And we also know that budgets are being developed right now. So this is a really valuable time to connect with your rep, right? You have the opportunity to test out a lot of what's going to be locked off this upcoming school year. And we're hitting that sweet spot where admins want to hear your wish list, right? They want to hear what you want for the upcoming school year. And on top of that, admins are looking for blended learning solutions right now, and NoRedInk fits perfectly into that category, right? If you've already spoken with someone on our sales team, but you can't quite find their email or their phone number, feel free to just email into sales@noredink.com, right down here, and we'll pick you up and get a phone call going. I think just bigger picture, you guys, like purchasing an education is really, really difficult, right? So, you know, what I love about my job is that every single day I get to talk to teachers and they get to bounce their ideas off of me of how they want to bring NoRedInk to their school or to their district, right? You know, I can come in and provide the logistics of pricing and help you with objection handling, but it's your anecdotal evidence and your belief that this program works that's really going to help us, become a successful team and ultimately get the paid version to your school. We also know that budgets are changing a lot, right? So there's a lot of funds specifically available to support learning loss associated with COVID. To name a few, there's school and district instructional materials fundings. From what we've heard, those are going to be staying put so that you guys can continue to support your students with blended learning. There's a ton of different federal title funds that NoRedInk falls under. Title I, Title III for ELLs. Title IV is specifically focused towards improving the use of technology to improve academic achievement. That's, defining NoRedInk essentially. There's also the CARES Act, right? We fall under the CARES Act. And then lastly, there's these literacy grants. I'll share this slide deck with you folks at the end of our time today, so you can take a look at these links further. All in all, we want to make sure that you have all the tools you need to advocate for NoRedInk Premium at your school. So we've got a nice checklist to show you what you get with free versus premium. We've got a new YouTube channel that's full of videos that you can work from, and a page with some of our recent case studies, some of them that I talked about today, right? We'll send you all the links to these as well as the slide deck that we're working with. And then you can easily, use what you find, but I still highly recommend that you need to connect with your representative to discuss implementation options for the next school year. Like I said, we're here to bounce ideas off of and to give you those pricing details and to kind of help you work with any roadblocks that you might be experiencing, right? I think it's also worth noting NoRedInk is in almost 2 out of 3 of all of the schools and districts in the country in some way, shape, or form, right? So you have a massive community of people around you who are using the premium version of the program and are seeing success. And we know those people and can connect you with them, right? So, just saying that we can help you build that community and kind of foster that growth with NoRedInk. All right. I'm going to take this time now to answer a couple questions. So the first one is, what can I do if I'm one single teacher who wants NoRedInk Premium? So good question. Like I said, we don't currently offer a single teacher license because this is seen as a supplemental resource. But what I would recommend is still getting in touch with your rep, right? Maybe there are some people at your school who are already using the free version, or people at the district who are using the free version, and we can work with you to see how we can support you and ultimately get premium to your school, right? When we're talking about the price of premium, just kind of as like a ballpark, you're never going to pay, we have like a minimum license of $1,500, and we start at a $15 per student cost. But the price will go down depending on the size of your school and how many students you want to implement with. So, kind of as a baseline, right? But that pricing does depend on a couple of different factors, right? If this webinar will be shared, it will absolutely be shared. So you guys can use this and send it to your admin if you would like. I think what would be helpful is to also, connect with your state rep and ask them what portions of this webinar they think are most valuable to bring up to, right? Is training included with NoRedInk Premium? So I'm going to go back to that slide. Great, awesome. So this NoRedInk Premium training, this is included with the cost of premium. What you are able to do with this, it's an online training modules, right? So you've got access to 9 of them, and you can work with them throughout the entire school year. What we recommend is to start with NoRedInk core training, and then picking any of these other modules. If you're working specifically on high stakes test prep with the SAT, that might be a great module to use, right? So we recommend starting with 2 and then using a couple more as needed. Can you clarify which grade levels NoRedInk is appropriate for, both the grammar and the writing features? Yeah, of course. So NoRedInk is a secondary curriculum resource. So what we recommend is starting with grades 5 and up, right? I think it tends to get a little bit rigorous for students who are below 5th grade. I would, of course, recommend trying it out with your own students. You know your students better than we do, right? But we recommend 5th grade and up. Okay. We're going to get into some writing assignment questions, and I think what I'll do here is go over here so we can take a look. Okay. Is there a way to prevent plagiarism or cheating on the writing assignments? That's a good question. So when we're talking about plagiarism, NoRedInk doesn't have a specific plagiarism checker, right? Instead, what we've done is we've found that a lot of the times when students are plagiarizing, really what it comes down to is that they don't know the differences between plagiarism and paraphrasing. So instead of taking the reactive approach, we've opted to take this preventative approach, right? And giving students practice on what the differences are between plagiarism and paraphrasing, right? So you can see, a lesson here kind of exemplifying, hey, like this is what plagiarism would look like if this is the original quote. Here's what a strong example of paraphrasing would look like, right? Do writing assignments auto grade? Another great question. We don't have any auto grading. The one place that would auto grade is with quick writes. Those auto grade on completion. So if students reach a certain, limit or a certain minimum of characters, then they get an automatic 100%. But teachers can always go back in and grade it again. The reason we don't have any auto grading is kind of that same philosophy of you folks knowing your students way better than we ever would, right? So with something, like a guided draft, instead what we want to do is give you just full scope of what they were writing and allow you to write in your comments. With something where students have done, multiple drafts, I'm going to pull up an example here. So let's say you requested a revision or something like that, or with a peer review with someone's original draft and then they're working on their final revision. We're going to show you the differences between the original draft and the final revision, so that you can, decide to grade how you want. Okay. Is there an option of using a trial period with premium in the fall to see how our students respond? We'd like data with our own students as evidence. Yeah, that's a great question. So the free version of the program best operates as a trial of the premium version, right? While it's lacking in content, like I said, it has very similar functionality. So, I myself as a state representative, I've worked with a lot of folks who have done pilots of the free version of the program. And typically what we do is we think, okay, we want our teachers to try a planning diagnostic. And then we want our teachers to all work through this specific unit. And if we can track strong growth with this growth quiz, then, we want to continue down and see if premium is a good option for us, right? So the free version, like I said, that's going to most closely operate as your trial. If you do talk with one of our reps, they can do a demo, something like this, something similar to this with your admin to give you guys more of a show of a understanding of how NoRedInk would work at your school or district. Can admin create learning pathways, diagnostics to use across the schools or classrooms? Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great question as well, right? When we're looking at giving each student an equitable shot at learning and giving teachers a consistent tool, right? Equity and consistency are something that admins are always looking for. So something like a planning diagnostic, you can use this little share button, share with other teachers, and there would be a link created that you can send out to all of your teachers. We have a district in Illinois, it's a high school district, and one of their instructional coaches created an entire scope and sequence for students grade levels freshman through senior. So every teacher knew that their students had to start with a benchmarking exam, work through some practice, and then there were some growth quizzes at the end, right? And she had all of this in a Google Sheet with assignments hyperlinked. Does Premium integrate well with Google Classroom or any other learning management systems? Yeah, so with Premium, we integrate with Google Classroom and Clever. Those are the two LMS systems that we work with currently. With both of those, it's a pretty seamless transition. Your customer success manager will help you set everything up at the beginning of your time with Premium. I'll wait for a couple more questions. Yeah, so when we're talking about, comparisons of NoRedInk with other products, like I said, I know I'm talking a lot about like connecting with your state representative, and I think that's definitely the best resource for you to reach out to. We've got a lot of knowledge of how NoRedInk stacks up against different products like Vocabulary, Think Circa, things like that, right? So what I would recommend is kind of going to your rep with a couple of questions, right? Of like, hey, we've been using this program for some time, but these are our end goals with writing. Would NoRedInk work better than this other product, right? I personally, of course, I'm biased. I choose to work for NoRedInk, and I think it's a spectacular program, but we can definitely help you out with those questions. How can NoRedInk help with English language learners or students with special needs? Great question. So there is a text-to-speech option within the program whenever students are working through practice or quizzes. They can have all of that text read aloud to them. One of the things, you can take a look at this on your own time. If you have your own account, you can go into this Help Info tab. And we have a great article here written by one of our curriculum folks, Sam. So she wrote about how NoRedInk can help support English language learners. And there's a ton of different tips and tricks in this specific article. I think also, bigger picture, what's worth noting here is this help center is incredible. It is chock full of so many resources. So if you have quick questions that you're not sure about the answer of, you can always email us. But again, this help center will have a lot of resources for you. Can we print assignments or lessons? Yeah, so with the practice part of NoRedInk itself, it's pretty difficult to print, right? Because each question is personalized to a student. And then if a student gets a question wrong, we give them a remediation process, right? So, those portions are difficult to print. One of the things that we do have within the program, let's see if I can get back to it here. I'll go this way. So with writing specifically and helping students with that pre-writing process, we've got printable resources to help them draft things up, right? So you can take a look at any of the essay types here. Let's look at narrative for fun. Right? And we've got, these different resources that you can print out and give to your students as they're drafting up their essays. These are great questions. I'm loving this. Are there other webinars I can check out to help me in using NoRedInk? Yes. So again, if we're looking in the Help Center, I'm going to go here. We do have access to all of our webinars here. There are definitely more to come. We're hoping to do more kind of similar to this. When we're talking about helping in using NoRedInk and best practices, there's a lot of great information in this Help Center as well. So, one of the things you could do is just research getting started, right? And there's a ton of articles here to help you out. Okay. I think we have time for like a couple more, just one more question, and then we'll go into t-shirt winners. Is there an app for NoRedInk or specific device requirements to use the site? So we don't have an app, so you can just use NoRedInk in the browser, right? And we work on pretty much all devices. If students, absolutely need to use their cell phones, for example, they can use NoRedInk on their cell phones. Definitely, like, best experience is going to be on, laptops or Chromebooks, right? But there's no specific device requirements. Okay. So I'm going to turn my camera back on. We're going to announce these super exciting raffle winners. All right. Okay, so people who get to go home with these sweet, sweet t-shirts who have a really cool pun on the back that you can't read on my back, but that's okay. Brenda Silvers, congratulations. Rebecca Wolf, you are a winner as well. Amy Russell, way to go. Jeremy Young, rock on. And Ray Andrus. So those are our t-shirt winners. You guys, thank you so much. I'm gonna close out. Let's see, here it is. We'll finish this in a nice professional way because clearly I am professional. But yeah, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate spending your time with us today. Like I said, you're going to get a link for the webinar and everything like that in your emails after this. And for those who have won, we'll reach out to you via email with the information on where we can ship those t-shirts, right? Thank you guys again. Thank you for everything you do as teachers and as educators. You are the real rock stars always, but specifically during this time of distance learning. So yeah, have a great rest of your day. Thank you.